The Baghdad sky filled with anti-aircraft fire aimed at U.S. cruise missiles. One missile apparently strikes a hotel. There are casualties. And Saddam Hussein calls it a day of conflict.
This is NBC Nightly News, reported by Garrick Utley.
Good evening. 2 years ago today, the American and Allied air war against Iraq was launched. Today, another round in the continuing confrontation with Saddam Hussein. Cruise missiles were launched from U.S. ships. Their target, a nuclear arms facility just outside Baghdad. But one missile apparently landed inside the city. At least 3 people are reported killed, many injured. Tom Aspel is in Baghdad tonight. Tom?
Garrick, it was exactly like the start of the last war here. One moment Baghdad was quiet, then suddenly it was under attack.
There were no air raid sirens, no dimming of the lights. When the attack began, anti-aircraft guns opened up all over the city, reaching for targets they could neither see nor hear. That told them there were no conventional warplanes in the sky. Cruise missiles. The Iraqi tactic learned during the Gulf War exactly 2 years ago is to spray the air with fire, hoping to hit one and at least deflect it. For more than 40 minutes, every gun in downtown Baghdad continued firing, and then it was over. The word spread. The target was at Zafariya, southeast of here. There was one huge explosion just outside the Rashid Hotel in the center of Baghdad. It killed a kitchen maid. Others were injured. The hotel lobby was a churned tangle of glass and furniture. Water from broken pipes flooded the ground floor. It was always considered the safest place in town. During the Gulf War, cruise missiles landing only 100 yards away from it didn't even crack the windows. Tonight, it was part of the collateral damage. The NBC News office on the 5th floor was damaged in the blast. Editor Derek Wilkinson was using a camera at the window when it happened.
I just heard one whoosh went past the window, nothing happened, then another one, and then suddenly there was a louder whoosh and an almighty explosion.
In one Baghdad hospital, doctors treated nearly 40 casualties from the explosion at the Al Rashid. They said a second woman had died on the operating table.
This was the last thing the Iraqis expected here, but on this anniversary, they know now confrontation with the United States continues. Garrick?
Thanks, Tom. Fred Francis is at the Pentagon this evening. Fred, the target tonight was a nuclear arms facility, but today an official with the International Atomic Energy Agency says the plant was, quote, absolutely out of action before the attack took place. What can you tell us about this?
Well, there's no doubt about it, Garrick. It was out of action. It has been out of action for some time, but it had 12 to 15 buildings full of equipment. Its primary facility before the war was nuclear research. It could have been activated at any time. But the primary thing to consider is that this building, this target, was more for shock value for the people of Baghdad. It was not a clear military objective. Warships, not warplanes, took the lead. While Americans were watching the football playoffs and Iraqis were watching Saddam lambast the U.S., 4 U.S. Navy ships were launching over 30 cruise missiles, each with a 1,000-pound warhead at a single target 8 miles southeast of Baghdad. The ships, one in the northern Red Sea, 700 miles from target, and 3 from the Persian Gulf, 450 miles from target, started firing at noon. The target, hit an hour and a half later, is one UN inspectors waiting in Bahrain say was a multi-billion-dollar nuclear component facility which escaped damage during the Gulf War.
The nuclear site has several advantages. One is that it is near Baghdad and makes the point to the people of the country as well as to the government that we are demanding compliance and that we are willing to enforce the resolutions.
Today's fighting began early at 2 in the morning near the northern city of Mosul when Iraqis began firing at U.S. patrol aircraft. U.S. Air Force planes destroyed one Iraqi missile site on the ground and blew up an Iraqi MiG-23 in air-to-air combat. It was the first time in 18 months that Saddam had seriously challenged the UN-U.S. no-fly zone in the north, a clear indication that he is trying to break out of tight international restrictions, even though he knows it will trigger Allied attacks.
I think Saddam Hussein's brain is wired differently than the people I deal with on a regular basis. His assumptions, his logic his mental processes are different. It doesn't make any sense from my perspective what he's doing now, but obviously he's got some rationale that he thinks makes sense.
Tomorrow, U.S. aircraft and satellites will take a look at the bomb damage and see if they have to strike that target again. And another airstrike or missile attack is quite possible sometime in the next 12 to 24 hours. And as one official here at the Pentagon said, right up until the time Mr. Clinton takes the oath of office. Garrick?
Thanks, Fred. Of course, the air attacks are intended to force Saddam Hussein to obey the United Nations resolutions in effect, including the one that allows UN weapons inspectors unhindered access to Iraq. At UN headquarters in New York City tonight is Tim Trevan, an official dealing with Iraq. Sir, a short while ago, the United Nations committee turned down yet another offer by Iraq, which would have hindered or limited access of these weapons inspectors. You want total unhindered access, correct?
Basically, what we need is to be able to get our people into the country safely. And the Special Commission has the right to choose the way in which it flies around Iraqi airspace.
So you're saying no deal with Saddam Hussein. He's playing games here. But if he does not give in, if he poses conditions, is it likely, as Fred Francis indicated a moment ago, that we may have more of these attacks against Iraq?
What I'm saying is, in particular, with respect to today, the Special Commission simply is not in a position to meet the conditions that the government of Iraq has imposed on us. And that is, namely, that we guarantee that the countries of the coalition do not put their aircraft into Iraqi airspace while we are flying. We simply can't deliver on that guarantee.
That is understood. Now, if Saddam Hussein continues his present tactics, is any further UN action required for the United States to keep up this pressure on a day-by-day basis, military pressure?
Well, certainly we at the Special Commission are taking further action with the government of Iraq to try and persuade them to abide by their obligations. But my understanding of the legal situation is that once the ceasefire has been broken, the state that existed before the ceasefire once again prevails.
So in other words, that means that military action could be continued without further action of the UN. Is that a correct understanding?
That's my understanding.
All right. Thank you very much. Tim Trevan at the United Nations this evening. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Next, we turn to Bill Clinton. In 3 days, he will be making the decision on whether to attack Iraq. We'll hear him talking about that with Tom Brokaw as we continue in a moment.